So this is the Aspect Pro. This is a new trad shoe for BD. In North America, this is a really important piece of the climbing shoe world. You know, what do you use in Yosemite? What do you use anywhere you're not sport climbing in a lot of cases? And a lot of people use a shoe like this all day, every day. So we said to ourselves, you know, what can we do in that space that actually matters, that's, you know, meaningful? Because there's a few styles out there that are really popular because they're good. So we've said, well, what can we do? And in that regard, it's like, if we bring a little bit of tech to that space, you know, how do we build the shoe, not only for like to make it perform well, but last a long time. So through many rounds of samples and quite a few years of working on this shoe, I think we've got a pretty good combination. You can see in this space what would be a little unique is this split forefoot. That allows us to kind of decouple the heel and change all these materials so that they're really suited to exactly what they're for. Again, we talked a little bit earlier about the tension rubber. The heel cup is molded in this 3D shape. All this toe rand rubber is about tension, but also friction. So there's a lot of differences, and that's why all these pieces are separated rather than kind of molded in one piece or just one big overlay. Underneath the forefoot rubber is a thermoplastic plate that is designed, you know, maximum stiffness, yet gives you the sensitivity you need. And that's kind of all about how do you layer these pieces all together, because all this leather and microsuede lining, it can stack up pretty thick, and a traditional board last or even a traditional slip last construction can put a lot between your foot and the rock. And in this case, we've got this rubber, this layer of thermoplastic, and then the liner, or the sock liner in the bottom. So all that's sort of headed towards how do you build the stiffness but maintain sensitivity. The rubber is one of our stickier rubbers. We have the Black Label Forge, which is our stiffest rubber, the Fuse, which is more of our grip rubber, and this is somewhere in between. So rather than going just to a full super hard rubber, which would be the first probably inclination when you're trying to edge, this is actually a little stiffer, because with that forefoot plate, we get the stiffness out of that and allows us to put a little bit stickier rubber on the forefoot. We use this really cool Echo dry tan leather. In this shoe, we felt like using a premium material like the Echo, which is a Danish leather brand. It's a shoe brand, but they make leather. They have a leather factory as well. And it uses something on the order of 50% less water to tan it. Tanning is a really rough business, and so we want to be really careful about the leathers we choose and then how we use leather in shoes, because it's not pretty generally, but when you have the Danish folks do it, it's better than maybe the alternative. Around the collar, we've got this welded, woven, and padded construction. So you've got the microsuede lining, and then textile on the outside, and that's all about durability and protection. You know, protect your ankle bones, still have the flexibility you need, but protection and then abrasion resistance. And then you can see this really nice, soft microsuede lining. Then the tongue is built in a very similar way. Microsuede lining, woven textile. That gives you a bit of breathability, gives you the padding that you want, and then it doesn't tend to take like a funny crease. A leather tongue will take a crease sometimes, and it can be uncomfortable. This tends to be a little bit more elastic. So that's an area that we did a lot of work on, try to keep this tongue really smooth on the inside, and then with the webbing gillies or lace eyelets, super low profile, super tough, protects the laces. So the laces are woven so that they've got this kind of almost ratcheting feel to them, a little bit of bumps, and that allows you to pull it tight, and it actually sort of locks in at each gilly. So you get this almost like a ratchet feel. It's kind of cool, something new that we're trying with this style, and we've had really good feedback on, you know, you don't have to crank it tight, hold it with your thumb, crank, then stealthily lace it. You just pull them tight, lace them, and they stay. Plus they're super tough. Really, this stuff is all kind of flush with the leather. So getting those long barrels protects the laces, because the webbing, wearing through the webbing is pretty difficult because it is quite tough. It's like nylon, and it just keeps you from burning through the laces. It also kind of creates a smooth, almost like a wall along here, so that you can't easily catch the lace in between. Like if you just have a loop or a hole eyelet, the lace comes around the outside and you can actually plausibly, catch that. The last shape on this shoe is a bit more downturned versus a dead flat, which you would normally see in this type of shoe. So giving that little bit of downturn kind of preloads you for some edging. It doesn't keep you from, standing on smearing or jamming in cracks. It's actually quite low volume in this regard, but it's got a pretty generous forefoot. So it's not super pointy, because in general, most people's feet are not super pointy. But what you find is that for thin cracks and, up to 0.75 or so, what's really important is the thickness here, and then even the thickness at the toe. People doing super thin cracks tend to jam right there. Like if you can get that in, you're in good shape. And then a low profile toe, this is all relatively elastic. It'll move if you have a taller toe, but the thickness this way in thin cracks is way more important than this. So give it the volume here and kind of lose it a little bit there. It'll move a little bit. You can see where the leather is in this forefoot area. The beauty of having a lace shoe is if you get the platform roughly the right width, and this is all leather around here, this can move under the rubber, and then the laces really can take up a lot of that fit difference. If you have a high instep or a low instep, a lace-to-toe shoe like this really is accommodating of a lot of feet. So it's really about getting that forefoot shape good, and then, like I said, anything above here stretches or moves pretty well. And the leather will tend to move and then stop a little bit. But in terms of the length, it's the same old story. You gotta get the length right, because it's probably not gonna go that way. This stuff is all under tension. I think we've kind of struck a nice spot, because this has a little bit of a hook, a little bit of downturn to the toe, that your toes tend to have a bit of a curl to them, but not like a fully knuckled up, short. I would fit this shoe touching heel and toe, because you're going to feel the tension on the slingshot, not so much toes. So you can go tight that way, and some people maybe would kind of knuckle up in a shoe like this, but that's really not the intent. This is kind of a flat shoe. I would go on size for street shoes and then come down from there. At this point in your climbing, maybe you'll have a good sense of where you want to be in terms of that amount of tension or crunch, but size street shoe and then maybe a half size down, and some people may go a full size down. It has the full size range down to US 4.5 up to 14, but it's just one style. Because we mold all of our rubber parts in like 3D molds, we do scale all of the rubber thickness with size. So even though the 4.5 doesn't have the same thickness at bottom, which is good, because it's quite a lot smaller. $199, March of 2023. We've been testing this thing for years.